Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Challenges for infrastructure development. In this module, we will have the discussion on different challenges which is always seen in the field of infrastructure development, such as one of the major challenge which we are going to discuss is the infrastructure investment gap, which is also named as the financial gap in infrastructure development. At the same time, inadequate and weak regulatory framework in many countries, sustainability of business models for infrastructure development, limited support from the government because of various other social responsibility which various government is having today. At the same time, demographic challenge in the field of infrastructure, maintenance and upgrading of infrastructure, environmental issues related to the infrastructure development, corruption and land acquisition. So, let me start with the first discussion, which is the first part of the challenge, which is the infrastructure investment gap. If one can see here the different statistics related to the investment gap, the global investment shortfall in infrastructure is currently estimated to be at least $1 trillion US dollar per annum. Global demand for the funding of infrastructure investment is expected to reach as much as 57 trillion by 2030. Africa alone is facing a financial gap of infrastructure development, which is approximately $35 billion per year. This includes taking into account the potential for efficiency improvement. This gap could double in the coming decade due to the growth as well as limited public finance funding and the lack of private capital. Similarly, the incremental investment spending across emerging markets and developing countries is estimated at around 1 trillion a year, more than what is the current spend. Global spending on basic infrastructure such as transport, power, water and communication, which currently amounts to 2.7 trillion a year when it ought to be 3.7 trillion. The gap is almost as big as South Korea's GDP and it is likely to grow faster and faster. India alone requires $1 trillion investment in infrastructure between 2012 to 2017 in order to bridge the deficit. So, here one can see that there is a gap of around 60 trillion US dollar for only for 4 items: transport, power, water and telecom in the during 2013 to 30. The second challenge is the challenge related to the regulation. Inadequate legal and regulatory framework that exists within a country is a critical issue for the infrastructure development. There are many countries in the world today where the infrastructure development is taken care by without any proper regulation and legal framework. For example, the contracts are signed between the government agencies and the private parties, but there are very less agencies to follow those contracts and to really regulate the day to day development of infrastructure projects going on. And at the same time, whenever investment is coming to the infrastructure sector in terms of FDI or in terms of public private partnership, the demand for the fair and competitive process is by those investors, because when investor wants to join the hand in any country developing and less developed, they want to really get certain return on their investment, and that return is not possible if the market or if the economy is not providing a very fair conditions for them to compete, and that is really one of the major challenge for various infrastructure projects, ongoing projects in the world today. Funding agencies are really taking care of funding agencies are really concerned about the investment. They want to be completed the project on time. Different agencies working for those projects or different project agencies forms in the infrastructure development. They try to have maximum number of project completion on time, but at the same time, due to the local protest, due to the unfair practices in the economy, due to highly non-competitive atmosphere in the economy, some of the projects are really not in the position to complete on time. And as we have understood that more we are prolonging the project of infrastructure development, more we are adding the cost of the project, because whatever contract is signed between the firm and the government agencies for the infrastructure development is basically on the calculation of the current cost which firms are really calculating to the target year of completion. But when projects are delayed, the cost of productions are not going to continue on the previous price. Cost of productions are going to increase, and with this increase the firms, infrastructure firms are having a very challenging time, very difficult time to control, and this is happening because of a very weak regulatory framework in developing and least developed countries. So, this can be divided, the regulatory framework can be divided as the credibility, legitimacy and transparency. So, when the government in least developed countries and developing country has to find out the transparency in their dealing, when they are going for the auction, when they are really going for the bidding, when they are really allowing the companies to join the hand in the infrastructure projects. There are certain examples in the world today which shows that these government agencies are lacking in terms of transparency, and they lose their credibility. As a government has a major responsibility to provide a level playing field and to provide a very competitive atmosphere, but if government is involved in rent seeking behavior, if government is really involved in nepotism and corruption, then in that case the whole purpose of regulation of the infrastructure projects, or the entire process of government being a supporter or being a promoter or being a guardian of that project is mistaken, and in such case the firms who wish to join the country for the infrastructure development, they are really having a very bad time, and they are on back foot in the infrastructure development. The second major challenge is basically the challenge in terms of what business model should be adopted for the infrastructure development. Given the condition of least developed countries and developing country today, it is indeed important and very difficult and challenging task for the infrastructure companies to have the effective planning. Whatever they have, whatever some of the firms are taking lessons from a country, it is not true that that lesson is going to give them a better result in some other country, because country to country social problems are different, country to country problems related to raw materials are different, country to country the issues and concern of the government is different, the functioning of the government is different in different country, and that way it is really difficult for the firms to find out that what business model, what really the effective planning should be adopted for the infrastructure development. The second point of the business model which infrastructure companies are really finding as one of the challenges, what type of public support, what type of public finance they will get from the government, because we are finding that today government is not really 100% partner in majority of the projects. Government is a very silent partner, or one can say that government is a partial partner in the infrastructure development projects, not the whole partner, because of the lack of the investment capacity of the government, because of the lack of revenues generated by the government, and the many upcoming responsibilities of the government which they have to really take care for the welfare. And one more point is the many social infrastructure development projects are basically taken care with the government support. So, government has to also finance those infrastructure projects. So, in that case, when the firms has to decide about the business model, they are really confused, and they are really having a challenging conditions to find out what public finance mechanism they will be adopting. At the same time, what models to finance the projects, even they are looking for only the private partnership, and majority of the private firms, or maybe they are having a consortium of firms, they are really not in the position to find out what mechanism they have to adopt, because when varieties of private firms are coming together, there are again the matter of returns to interest, return on that investment, and that way a proper finding of the suitability and sustainability of business model is again one of the real challenge. At the same time, feasibility study of the projects are being done, but the feasibility of study of the projects are really how honest, how sincere, that again makes the business model to be adopted without any risk. One of the major challenge for the business model of infrastructure projects today is the risk identification. There are certain risks which is basically seen risk, which is basically non-risk, but there are certain risks which is unseen and unknown. So, in case of such problem, when you have unknown risk available in the market, for example, what condition of the labor will be there in the society, whether the labor will be supportive or not, what type of political interference will be available in different part of the world. Some of the companies, some of the firms are not aware, and even if they are taking lessons from the previous examples, previous infrastructure projects, that is not going to really help them in the new projects, because new projects is in a newly in a new place, and local problems are not really not sometime really clear to them, and in that case whether it is social protest, or maybe the political interference, or maybe the financial gap, or maybe the in terms of the risk related to the partners of the projects, it is really difficult to identify those issues quickly by these infrastructure firms, and sustainability of business models of infrastructure development is really one of the major challenge in that case. The second most important challenge, not only in one country but across the country, which we are finding today, is the public finance, because the government is really taking care of various other social responsibility as a part of the welfare concern and the promise to the public, and at the same time there are budget constraint of the government. Government cannot really do all the activities which they were doing and they were involved in the past, but they have to really target their expenditure, and when they are targeting their expenditures, the major concern for many developers, infrastructure developers today, is how to have a proper coordination with the government finance, and that way some of the governments are rich, some of the governments are poor. A majority of the least developed countries governments are not in the position to support such big infrastructure projects, and at the same time in developing country also, developing countries governments are also involved in varieties of other social infrastructure activities and providing public goods to the public. So, in that case there is really a big challenge for the infrastructure companies to find out what new wage of public finance and what new support from the government they can get it. At the same time, what will be the alternative sources of financing such as pension funds and endowment funds and insurance companies. So, even if those alternative sources, if a firm has to find out, they have to again see the government policy and the public finance mechanism. So, in such case also it is again the matter of public finance, it is again the matter of government decisions that how they are really supporting the development of infrastructure projects in the country. At the same time, risk sharing model, infrastructure projects, as we have discussed, that it is a risky project. So, whether government is ready to share the risk only in terms of policy, or whether they are also able to share the risk in terms of financial or maybe the social, or maybe in the field. If government is really sincere, majority of the government, some of the examples are very good examples from Eastern European countries, where the government is sharing the risk not only at one level, but at various level. And that really shows the government concerns in infrastructure development. It is part of the public policy, or one can say the public finance, when it comes for the risk sharing financial burden, risk sharing financial models. But when it is basically public finance, it is not only the matter of finance, but also the government policy, which makes finance ready and sometime not ready. So, if public finance is really liberal, that can really support, or that can really attract the multilateral development banks to join the country. If public finance is really inward looking, really controlled, then they will not really look for the multilateral development agencies and banks to support the infrastructure projects. One of the another challenge is the demographic challenge. With the growing population in least developed countries and developing countries, we are also finding there is a fast pace of urbanization in these economies, and in such a situation you need more roads, you need better railway facility, more expansion of the railways, telecommunication, airports, etc. And there is always shortage of these items, even if roads are being constructed, but it is not really maintained properly. So, the roads which is constructed after 4 years or 5 years, that is not in the position to really give you a matter of happiness. And even if the railway lines are expanded, but it is not true that railway lines are expanded and that is not really having the overcrowd conditions. So, you are the government is really developing some of the these facilities, but those these facilities are really fall short of the growing demand of these infrastructure facilities, because ultimately you have huge pressure from the population growth. Similarly, the telecom facility, which the towers and the other internet facility which is being provided in many developing countries is not up to the mark, is not really able to fulfill the requirement of the people, because everybody is not having the capacity to buy those products. Infrastructure products such as telecommunication and internet are not the products which everybody can afford. For affording those products also, people should have the income and ability to buy it. So, again the question of who will pay for it, that comes the question of payment, and that is really important, because there are certain facilities which cannot be available free for to the public, it has to be paid by the public. So, when it comes for the payment, everybody is not in the position to pay for it. At the same time, in every society we are finding the problems of free riding. People wants to have these facilities free, and majority of the infrastructure products, infrastructure development is finding the problem of public goods, as we have discussed in our previous lectures, that if people do want to use it freely, if people do want to consume such products freely, that is again the problem for the government or for the developer or the infrastructure companies to have their to continue with the profit, because if the non-payment problem will start, if the people do not want to pay for the flyovers or for other facilities, then who will pay for it? That is the biggest question for the infrastructure companies. How it will be maintained, how it will be gaining firms, how the firms will gain from it, that is again one of the challenge. And this is happening because of the demographic pressure. The country which is having more demographic pressure, they are really finding it difficult to maintain the infrastructure facilities. At the same time, not only maintaining, but again fulfilling the requirements of the infrastructure with the growth of the population. And so one challenge is to provide the infrastructure, another challenge is to maintain the infrastructure, and the third challenge is to stop the free riding problem, especially in majority of the populated country is facing such problems. So, the demand for infrastructure outpaced the supply of infrastructure due to the migration and high population growth, and that is the reality of the world today, that majority of the activities by the infrastructure firms are basically outpace the supply of the infrastructure, because the constant growth in the population and the demand and the migration and urbanization. As we have also discussed in case of maintenance, in developing country demand for infrastructure is driven by the growing population, and that too by the young population, and by the economic growth process and urbanization and industrialization. More we are industrializing, more we need infrastructure. More we are urbanizing, we need more infrastructure. More we are migrating from rural to urban part, we need more infrastructure. But the fact is that in many countries there isn't any ready infrastructure. In many countries there are certain ready infrastructure, but at the same time it is not really easy to maintain those infrastructure. The condition is little different in developed countries, because in developed countries much of the infrastructure needs maintenance and rehabilitation because of the aging of the assets. The infrastructure in many European countries and North America are becoming functionally not viable, and it requires change. For instance, the average of bridges in US is currently 42 years and dams is 52 years. So, these developed economies are also facing problem in terms of changing those infrastructure and building the new infrastructures. In Germany, almost 1/3 of rail bridges are over 100 years old, because they were developed long time back. I have personally seen in Poland more recently in October last year that they are really having the new railway stations building up, because they were really old, very old. So, with the support of European Union they are doing it. Road constructions are also on peak, because Poland was not the part of European Union for many years, and when they became the part of European Union, they have started really supporting the European Union has started supporting the Poland, and that way there are new roads coming up, new flyovers coming up, new bridges coming up, because the old bridge and roads were not in the position to really sustain the current population growth and the fast economic growth process of that particular economy. So, these economies, these countries requires huge investment for maintenance. Not the maintenance of infrastructure is the major problem of the developed country, while the establishment of the infrastructure is a major challenge for the developing country. So, in developed country they require huge investment for maintenance and upgradation of existing infrastructure, while the developing and least developed country requires huge investment not only for the existing infrastructure maintenance, but also to have the new infrastructure added in the economy. Otherwise, with the huge population, urbanization, migration, it will be really difficult to continue to take care of the infrastructure requirement of those population. One of the challenge which majority of the country is facing today in terms of infrastructure development is the corruption. As we have seen that because of the lack of regulatory mechanism, as it is observed by the different reports by the World Bank, that whenever these developing countries are receiving the funds and when they are really practicing the establishment of infrastructure projects, there are so many illegal and one can say that unfair practice involved in the infrastructure development, and that has the support from the government, because majority of the government officials, a very famous book which was published by the World Bank is Bureaucrats in Business, which has found out that in more than 15 countries how government mechanism is creating problem for the growth of the business. And if we have a very fair government mechanism, we have much better possibilities and much better opportunity to get the better infrastructure. But if we have corruption involved in the decision making at the government level, because in majority of the projects government is a partner, in some of the projects government is a final regulator. So in that case we cannot really ignore the government. Infrastructure development cannot be fulfilled without the support from the government, and when infrastructure projects are going on, firm has to depend on the government support, and when they are asking for the government support, or even if without support also, at the initial level of bidding or initial level of contract signing, if things are not fair, then in that case possibilities of building up a new infrastructure or better infrastructure is really dark. So probable solution is to come up with such problem is to have better private participation in infrastructure projects with a fair and very competitive practice. But it is not happening because infrastructure projects are having the merits. One of the merit is it is having the long period of time to complete. At the same time it involves the government directly, and the third is it cannot ignore the interference of the regulatory so-called regulatory mechanism, which do play a very dual role in terms of supporting the infrastructure, but at the same time supporting their own interest, which is considered as the rent seeking approach in the infrastructure development. One major concern for or one major challenge for the infrastructure development is the environmental concern today. Rapid urbanization is really affecting the quality of the environment, lending to the distortion of the living conditions and overall decline in the productive capacity in many countries in the world today. So the World Bank most recent data suggests that the additional cost of climate change adoption alone in the developing world will be up to $37 billion each year. Most of this will be spent on infrastructure. So that shows that how if a country has to really take care of the environmental aspect of the infrastructure development, it is not so easy to again have the financial assistance for such climate change adoption, such climate change conditions which is on the way. And when we say infrastructure, it is not only for a year, but it is for the years which will continue. And if we are not really taking care of such environmental concern at the initial level, then that is going to really lead us in a very uncomfortable environmental conditions in the future also. So there are certain recent improvement which we can see in the Nordic nations, also in many other European countries, which has really taken care for the rivers, which has really taken care for the city life, and even on the cost of better infrastructure and better investment in infrastructure, they have not forgotten the responsibility of environmental concern, and that way developing country and least developed country has many lessons to take from other countries which has developed in infrastructure in their past. And even if they have developed their infrastructure in the past, when it comes for the remodeling and restructuring of those infrastructure, today they are really concerned about the environmental impact of such concern, such a structural change and modernization. One of the major challenge which infrastructure development is facing today is the land acquisition, because the significant challenge in achieving the infrastructure development goal is the way land acquisition is done for infrastructure projects. One can see today that how this land acquisition act in India is being controversial, and this is controversial because of many reasons, and not only in India, but in many parts of the world. Substantial difference between the compensation offered and the actual value of the land is having a great difference, and that difference makes the infrastructure project sometime delayed, because people do not want to really lose their land, but at the same time when they are being offered some compensation that is due to the again further growth in that particular area in that economy, it is not as good as to lose the land, because losing land is basically losing the opportunity of agriculture production and livelihood. But how fast they are getting a certain return on their loss, that is also one of the issue in developing country to calculate, and the lack of an ineffective mechanism of land acquisition is still continuing in these economies. So, the simplification and transparency in the land acquisition is required today in many developing country and least developed country, and again we find out lots of unfair means and illegal practice involved in such activities. And we can simply say that these challenges, whatever challenges we have discussed today, these challenges are the challenges which is seen all over the world today. Developed countries are having the challenge of maintenance, developing countries are having the challenge of establishment of the infrastructure and the non-payment. Many developed and less developed countries equally has seen the problem of rent seeking in the infrastructure development, and developing country which are more concerned for the infrastructure development today with the support from the investment coming from international agencies and other partners. They have another challenge such as the environment concern, and we find out that it is not so easy in terms of business modeling also, or in terms of land acquisition also. It is not so easy that infrastructure projects which is being developed today in any part of the world is without any challenge. The fact is that manufacturing a product is more easier job than the infrastructure products. So, we should not really forget that infrastructure development requires the support not only from the government and not only from the investor, but also from the society, and to make society ready for such support, it is indeed important to have the investment in the social infrastructure first. Again, I would like to cite here the examples of newly industrialized nations which has equally developed their social infrastructure as well as the physical infrastructure, because they cannot go alone, but they have to go together, social infrastructure as well as the physical infrastructure. Thank you.